Welcome to today's episode of Jolene's Books and Writers Talk. We are pleased to have as our guest CS Bennett. He is an accomplished author and current president of the First Coast Romance Writers here in Jacksonville, Florida. A prolific and eclectic storyteller, he has written nearly 20 books across genres, including nonfiction, romance, and mystery fictions. Residing in Putnam County, Florida, Mr. Bennett brings a rich perspective to his work as both a reader and a writer. In this episode, we discuss his novel, The Allure of Roses, which has recently been optioned for movie rights, an exciting development for this multi-genre author. He will have a table at the Literary Indulgence Festival on June 28th in downtown Jacksonville, Florida. Although he does not have a website yet, you can follow him on his Facebook page, which I will put up on the screen in a few minutes. Take it away, Curtis.
I'm CS Bennett. I've been a published author since maybe 2011. I started writing when I was little. I used to tell bedtime stories to my siblings just to get them to go to sleep. Now, whether they went to sleep because my stories were so good or they got bored or were just sleepy, I would never know. I would have to ask them, but probably they don't even remember that far back. But I had an interest in writing because I used to read a lot. And I love stories that began with once upon a time. Today, even though I'm considered a writer, I refer to myself more as a storyteller in the vein of Jules Verne's and some others. But I started out writing romantic poems to friends of mine, girlfriends, because they would pay me to do that. They knew I was a good writer. So they would have me write the poem, but they would add their name to make it seem like they wrote it. In many of the cases, they would come back to me and say, hey, she wasn't fooled. She knew I didn't write that. But it was a way to get some attention and some side business writing romantic poems. Eventually, I got to a point where I was reading books that I felt I could do a better job of doing that. And so I started honing my skills as a writer. And I think one of the things that assisted me coming up through adolescence was whenever I had like a crush on a girl, I didn't write just a one-page letter. I almost wrote novelettes, 6, 7, 8 pages, just trying to explain who I was and what I was about and what I thought of them. But like I said, that did help to hone my writing skills. Now, more professionally, I did originally join with the Jacksonville First Coast Writers Club back in the 90s. And I was a member for maybe a couple of months, but traveling up there from where I lived in Putnam County, an hour or so, it just was not beneficial for me. And the fact that they only had maybe 8 to 10 people that ever showed up, that didn't move me to remain in the group. And they rarely had any guest speakers. So I bailed out after a point. And eventually I hooked up with Volusia County Romance Writers Club. I joined not necessarily to write romance because I write across different genres. I write human interest stories, military suspense. I got one mystery, of course, romance, and I've written some political books. But it was the one association that I could be a part of that I could learn to improve and enhance my writing skills. That group had like maybe about 38 members, and that's where I met current members, Jan Jackson, who was actually the president at the time of that group, and Globe, and many others, I think, that were part of First Coast Romance Writers over the last 8 years. Some are no longer members, but a lot of them I met when I was going to Volusia County, and we would meet at a small library in Lake Helens. We would have guests, and out of our 30-something members, I think we had like maybe 12 or 13 published authors. One author had written over 50 books. I was very impressed. I stayed with that group for 5 years. And the only reason why I parted ways with them was because of my work. I used to work Child Protective Services, and that commanded a lot of my time. Sometimes I would work and get home like around 1 in the morning. I went for a couple of years without being a part of any or affiliated with any writers group, but I still continued to write. It was around 2011 I decided to return to school and pursue my third degree program. I did this at the University of North Florida up in Jacksonville. At that time, I majored in political science and public administration. I already had a degree from UNF some years before that in criminal justice. What I learned in school, I used in the job market. And my political science, I got involved in some political groups here in Florida. So it all helped. And in my romance stories, the fact that I traveled the world around, some of those places that I traveled to are pretty much a backdrop of many of my romance stories. I've been to places like Greece, Athens, Venice, Naples, Italy. One thing I learned while in my travels, their names that they use aren't necessarily what we use. Like Naples over there is called Napoli, Venice is Firenze, and Rome is called Roma. And the same thing with other countries over there, Germany and whatnot. They don't call themselves Germany. And we all know that in Japan, I think they refer to themselves as Nippon, something like that. But anyway, I was able to use a lot of my travels and my stories, which made the plot and the characters and the scenery more exotic in my estimate. And that would include my travels to the Caribbean as well and to Africa. And of course, being in the United States Navy, that added to my authenticity as far as when I wrote about sea life. And that's one thing that comes across when people read your books is how authentic it is. Have you really lived or experienced what you're talking about, or did you just make that up, or you did some research? And even with the knowledge that I do have, I do a lot of research to augment what I already know and experience. So I would say no one has ever told me to quit my day job. And I retired from the workforce back in 2008 anyway, and committed to just writing full time. After I finished my last degree program back in 2012, that's pretty much all I've been doing, writing, doing book signings all over the East Coast, Georgia, South Carolina, you name it, and speaking to different groups, civic groups, political groups, women's clubs, things like that. So I've been doing that for about 10 years. I recently let it be known that I met someone who had connections I did not even know about. I didn't even know who this person was until I met him back in December. And the story goes like this. I have an aunt who's a renowned artist in the South Carolina, North Carolina, all the way up to DC area. She's renowned. And she's been featured on a couple of PBS type interviews within her house, because her house is much like a museum. She has paintings hanging all over her walls that she's done. And she belonged to a couple of artist guilds. And she has artwork in the galleries up there. And whenever I go up there to visit her, I try my best to buy at least one of her paintings to help her out. Not that she really need any help from the family. And I've also commissioned her to do paintings for me. But the thing is, I was coming up there in December to visit on my way up to Philly with some stops along the way. And I was told that she had a friend she wanted me to meet that she met in church. She didn't say how long ago that had been. So when I got there, and I was only there for one day because I was leaving the next day to head up to, I think, DC, spend some time with my sister before I made my way all the way up. And so I met this guy, and first thing he said to me, man, I got to talk to you about that book. And the way he said it, I didn't know if it was good or bad. So we sat down. He said, I read that book and I couldn't put it down till I turned the last page. Then I knew I was okay. So what had happened, and I'm still wondering who this guy is, because he started talking about how this book had all the main ingredients for a major motion picture. He said it had intrigue, it had adventure, it had romance, it had a lost treasure, which is the painting that went down in this cargo ship during it being transported from the Louvre in Paris to the Metropolitan Art Museum up there in New York. But somewhere in the Caribbean, it went down in a storm, and this famous painting went with it. And I have to remind people all of this is fictitious, because I get people ask me, is this a real story? No, it's a made up story. But anyway, he started to tell me his background and who he was. And this guy was like Hollywood royalty. He's been executive vice president of MGM Studios, vice president of Columbia Studios. He's been involved in numerous TV productions and shows, and he's like semi-retired. And I say semi because he's left the Hollywood scene, but he has his own company and he has a partner. And what they do, people send those two their screenplays with hopes that he would say, hey, this is great. I'll take it to the studios and we will option it. And this is a guy who charges $800 an hour to review somebody's screenplay. Here, for nothing, he read mine all the way through within 3 hours. And he was just bowled over. He wanted to know what else I had written. And so we talked for about 2 hours. And I got there like around 8 at night. So I was up to almost 11 with him talking. And I had to go to bed and get up and leave. But anyway, we communicated. And eventually, he had a visit he was making to Florida and Port St. Lucie, I believe it was. And he wanted to come here for a week so we can work on things. And sure enough, a couple of weeks ago, he came and he stayed in the guest cabin on the property. We had a good time. I got to know him. He got to know me. We went through some of the books and things. He read another one of my books and he wants to make that into a movie. It's a human interest story about two high school athletes who are exceptional talents, like a LeBron James or something, or Caitlin Clark. Their skills are just beyond what others at their age are able to do. He loved that one, and he's going to read some more. But right now, he began to adapt the story about the painting that went down the cargo ship. He's adapting that into a screenplay now, because that's the language of Hollywood. They go by screenplays, and I don't know the first thing about writing a screenplay. I've read some, but the name of the book is The Allure of Roses. And basically, it's about this painting of this model, and it happened back in the 40s. And the subject of that painting is no longer alive. She's deceased, and I think she died in her 60s or something like that. But her daughter carried her name, and her granddaughter carried her name. It's the reverse with men, but you might have a Douglas Sr., Douglas Jr., Douglas III. Well, this one guy who's a treasure hunter, and he has a degree in oceanography, and he's found other treasures that were lost for decades and whatnot. So he wants to pick up this particular adventure and try to find this painting on this cargo ship. Now, a lot of people say if it went down and it's a painting, wouldn't it be all wet and everything by now? At that time that it went down, it was placed in a special container. It came from the Louvre, so they knew it was valuable. So it was specially sealed and everything, and then placed into a vault. He goes after it, but he tries to locate the woman who's featured in the portrait. And that's when he learns that she's deceased and that she did have a daughter and she was deceased. But there was a granddaughter by that name, Rose. And eventually he reached out to her after he's tried several people with that name. And she finally checks her mother's email one last time. And that's when she saw him trying to communicate with her mother. So she writes him back to tell him, my mom and grandmother are deceased. But they eventually meet. And of course, a romance takes place. He takes her on one of his outing to the site that they believe the ship went down and so on. But anyway, back to the producer. His name is Peter Andrews. And he's going to come back and we're going to do all the, what you would call the business side of things. I'm going to have a lawyer with me to protect my rights and my intellectual material. A lot of people in the entertainment business, they in the entertainment part, but they don't know the business part. And that's why a lot of writers and especially singers and whatnot, they get ripped off because they don't learn the business side. They get a contract, they don't really read it. They don't have a lawyer representing them, and boom, they may sell as a group, individual singer, they may sell enough albums or whatever to go gold or platinum or whatever. And if it's, let's say like TLC, the group TLC, their first royalty check was like $50,000. And they had to split that between the three members. And that didn't even include the fact that they had to pay for a lot of other things, promotional fees and travel fees for the buses and setup fees for the stage. And by the time it was all done, I think that each one might have gotten like maybe $8,000. And the company made millions. So that's not going to happen to me. And another thing is when you option these screenplays off to a studio, sometimes they may sit on it for a year or two. I remember there was a Megalon or something like that. It was a book written about a giant squid. And Disney was interested in purchasing the screenplay to this. They did eventually. But they sat on the movie for 10 years before they came out with it. People always ask me, when it's going to come out, when it's going to come out. First of all, I had to get to that point where we option this. And it takes time to convert a novel into a screenplay. It would be just as difficult if it was the reverse. If he gave me a screenplay and say, okay, can you adapt this into a novel? We don't say in novels, walk over to the table, pick up the vase and smash it down on the ground in anger. We don't write like that. But anyway, he said he should be finished the screenplay by sometime in early May. And then he'll come back here and we'll do the deal. And then we'll discuss the second book he's interested in making a movie out of. The point that I like to make to people is that you never know who's going to read your book. And that's one of the reasons why I give my books away to people who are influential. I just say, hey, this is a gift. My understanding of Tom Clancy and his success is that he was a writer, but he was really a nobody until there was a cabinet meeting that Ronald Reagan had, and he got there a little early. And he started reading his book, and everyone was interested in what he was reading. And so he mentioned that some writer that writes good books, and his name is Tom Clancy. He's a really good writer, suspense and all that, the covert world, CIA stuff. And from that point, Tom Clancy took off. Anytime I meet somebody I think that's important, even if I don't, to say, hey, because there's times when I have book signings and somebody's just like lingering around, and when nobody's around, I say, you interested in getting this book, aren't you? Yeah, I am, but I don't have the money. So I would tell them, okay, just see me after the book signing and I'll give you a book, but just promise me you'll read it. And they would say, okay. And I would give them a book, and especially to young people. Most of the times they would read it. There was one individual, a young teenager I gave a book to, and I came back a couple of months later to an event they were having, and they invited me. It wasn't about a book signing or anything. It's like a festival or something. I ran into this kid and I asked him, well, did you start reading a book? He said, no. I said, but you promised me that you would. I said, that's the only reason I gave it to you. I said, I'd rather have given it to somebody who was going to read it rather than give it to someone who's going to just let it sit on the shelf. So I admonished him mildly, but I don't know if he ever read it. Like I said, I have people who come to me all the time. I've had men seem to be really into my novels. I get people, I've heard a couple of times, man, I haven't read a book in 22 years. I picked up that novel of yours and I couldn't put it down. So that's always a good thing. To me, that's the best compliment you can get from a reader is that they couldn't put your book down. So I usually incorporate, like I said, a lot of my personal experiences and my travels into my books. And because I honed my skills in writers' clubs, such as in Volusia County and our current writers group up in Jacksonville, First Coast Romance Writers, I learned a lot and I studied a lot, and I put out my first book to be published back in 2012, I believe.
So are your books self-published or do you have a traditional publishing?
Self-published because I always wanted to have control over my works. I wanted to get the bulk of my money, and I love designing my own book covers.
Cool. That was my next question. Who helps you with your covers?
I designed them, and I do have a book cover editor. He knows the technical stuff. That's like Leah Davis. I give dimensions and stuff, and he works it out, the bleed and all this stuff. Lingo I don't understand, but it comes out. And now Pete, the producer, he's written a book too. And matter of fact, I've adapted his novel into a real novel, in other words, formatting wise, because even though he wrote a novel, he's still writing it with the mindset of a screenwriter. So I'm just about halfway through with that book. But he also asked me to help him design this book cover for that. And I came up with a concept. And guess what? I sketched it. I sent it up to my aunt, who I met him through, who's the artist, and she's doing the artwork. And she loved my concept. And it's really good to have all these people involved in it. Let me tell you how the Allure of Roses came about. I have a friend of mine that I met way back in 8th grade. And she was the life of the party type young lady, very intelligent. Right now, I think she holds a couple of degrees. One is chemistry and whatnot. And unfortunately, her husband just passed away a couple of months ago. But we became friends way back in 8th grade and high school, throughout high school. And then we lost kind of track of each other for about 4 or 5 years because I went to college in Tennessee and then I went into the Navy. But I came across her on a visit to Philadelphia, where we're both from, when I was visiting my mother. And we went out and had lunch, not that day, but a couple of days later. And we've been keeping in touch throughout those years, those decades. And I think one time she was second runner-up or first runner-up in the Miss Pennsylvania contest. I started writing too, but I never got anything published. I just wrote. And she would read some of my manuscripts. I think I wrote 3 during that 15-year period. And even when she was in the hospital, I think she had some kind of surgery, hernia or something. She loved the fact that she had one of my manuscripts to read. So she said, if you ever get published one day, would you consider having me on the cover of your book? And I said, sure, I mean, that's the least I can do because you really have been very supportive. And I believe in rewarding people who supported me and was there to encourage me. So the opportunity came after I'd written like about 12 romance books. And it came about because I went to Philly on a visit to see my mom, God rest her soul. And I called a couple of friends, and she was one of those friends. Her name was Margaret, and her middle name is Rose, which she goes by a lot, Rose. And she said she wanted to share something with me. So we set up an appointment to meet the next day or the day following that day. And we met in a public restaurant that was attached to a grocery store. It was like a second level. And I'm seeing that with some of the Publix, the new Publix, they got like an upper level where you can go eat your sandwiches and stuff. But anyway, she met me there with her daughter, and she showed me some studio photos of herself. And they all were beautiful pictures and some sensuous. But one caught my eye because it looked like it should be in a museum, framed like the Mona Lisa. And then being fixated on that one photo, I started thinking about a storyline to go with that. And I said, this has to be a work of art that has the world attention, has world recognition. But to draw people into it emotionally, it has to be a picture that met some kind of calamity or something. And what better calamity or backdrop to come up with than having it lost at sea? It's just a painting that's, if discovered, is worth over $240 million. So that's incentive enough for a lot of treasure hunters to go after, professional and amateurs. And just think about it. There were people, men, basically willing to risk their lives to go in search of this painting. That basically was the motivation for the book and why I wrote it. And the Allure of Roses is now on 12, maybe 13 or 14 different online sites like Amazon, Apple Books, Barnes and Nobles.
Okay. So do you use Draft Digital or Ingram Sparks or both?
Yeah, I do. I do draft the digital. I used to do, God, what's the name of it before I went draft the digital? There was another company I was with that was associated with Amazon, but eventually I went to draft.
Oh, Create Space.
There you go. The only thing I don't like about that is Amazon. They have that book club they have for their members, whoever pay that money for that book club. This is the way it should be, I think. They should be able to show their readers at least one or two chapters of any author's book. If they like it, buy the darn book. No, they let them read the whole thing. And you don't get really rewarded for that, or you get some pennies on the dollar for it. And I don't like that. And Amazon is just hard to deal with. So
Yeah.
I don't really put anything on Amazon now. If you find anything of mine's on Amazon, it was on there before I parted ways with them. I don't even check Amazon when I go to draft the digital.
Okay. All right. Hey, that is up to you. And I encourage everybody to get the heck away from those.
Yeah. But I still have some books up there on Amazon. I think I have like about 10, 12. I've written, wow, about 28 books. I published like about 26. I'm going to tell you, between 2011 through 2013, 2 of those years, I was going to school full time. I made the president's list. I graduated magna cum laude from UNF, and I wrote 16 books during that 3-year period. It was just like I had some kind of mental disease or something. I write a book, finish it, then a week or two later, another story starts formulating in my head, and next thing I know, I'm sitting down typing. That went on for 16 books over a 3-year period. And it was exhausting because going to school is no joke, carrying a full-time load, class load.
I know, I'm trying.
But somehow I did it. I tell people I attribute it to a bump on my head. Like I had some kind of savant type experience because I hit my head. But 2 years later, I ended up writing 3 books simultaneously across 3 different genres. And I didn't mean to do that. It was just up there in my head to do that. And people would say, how could you focus on that? I have problems focusing on one chapter or one book. Well, I said, I have 3 degrees. When you go to college, you have different courses, you have different professors. Each one of them give you homework like their class is the only one you have.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to compartmentalize. You learn to compartmentalize. You work on your geography stuff one day or whatever, a couple of hours. You work on your English stuff, your math. And that's the way I approached those 3 different books, those 3 different genres. I would just switch gears. I work on one for 3 days, and then boom, I work on the second one, and down the road, the third one. And within a year and a half, I finished all three. It was very exhausting. I hope I never do that again. But sometimes it's just in there, and it's not like I sit down and decide I'm going to write a book. Sometimes it's just like I feel compelled to do it. It's a passion about it, but it's like I got to get the stuff out of my head.
A lot of writers feel that way. I think the muse finds people that are susceptible to that sort of thing, and they just keep sending you stuff. So long as you pump it out, they're going to send you more. Okay, let's go over to the entertainment lawyer for just a second. Are you part of a guild like the National Writers Guild or the Writers Union or something like that?
No, I plan to become one.
Okay. And did you find your lawyer through friends or was there a referral or?
I'm still looking.
Okay. There is one that specializes in entertainment
Contracts.
law, and she's in Orlando.
Send me her name.
I'll look it up. I'm trying to get her to do a series on what authors should do about their copyrights once they pass away. And she's trying to get together with an estate planner, and they're checking all the laws and all that to give out practical advice for authors, because 70 years after you pass away is a long time. And most of those copyrights, the books just fall in the cracks and they go away. You need somebody that's willing to take care of them for
That's
that
true.
amount of time. It may not ever get any money, but a couple of pennies, but still,
Yeah.
you never know. Like your movie guy, somebody might get it that way.
And one thing I wanted to tell people about when you write, go ahead and put out your best effort, because like I said, when opportunity knocks, you need to be prepared. Fortunately for me, my aunt, I left a couple of books with her a year or two ago, and she knew what business Pete was in, Hollywood producer and all that. And she talked me up. And fortunately, I didn't let her down. I knew he was coming up. So I figured, this is what he told me, I figured I better read one of his books and see what all this hype is about, the CS Bennett, her nephew. So he did. And fortunately, my book was right where it should have been. So always give your best effort, because you never know who's going to pick up that book and read it and say, hey, this may look like it could make a good movie or whatever, play or whatever.
Yeah, you don't want to disappoint your relatives in your cheerleading section because they stuck with you.
Yeah, so there was no duds in this, and thankfully he didn't have to tell her, I don't think so. I read it and I had a chance. It was mediocre or something like that. No, but this guy, like I said, he sung the praises of the Allure of Roses for a good 2 hours. And I came there sleepy and tired, but meeting him and hearing what he had to say, that was enough for me right then and there, that somebody from his background thought so highly of my book that for me, it could have stopped right there. I would have been happy the rest of my life. But the fact that he said he wanted to turn it into a screenplay and a movie.
Oh, you're going to have to get a website now.
Oh, yeah. I had a good one time, and it just got taken down. Yeah. And speaking of the Allure of Roses, there's a spinoff called The Essence of Cinnamon. Now, the Allure of Roses, the name of the painting itself is called The Rose of Enchantment, and it went down in the Caribbean, the West Indies. The sequel, The Essence of Cinnamon, which is the name of that particular painting, it went down in the Pacific Ocean near the Ring of Fires, which is a volatile area in the Pacific with all the underwater volcanoes and all that seismic activity. So that makes it even double dangerous to go searching for a picture. But it's done. That's a good sequel, I believe.
Now, The Essence of Cinnamon is available as a novelette, I believe, in the autumn.
Yeah, it's a novelette in the autumn series of the anthologies, but there's a full-length version. Barnes and Nobles, Apple Books, and a whole lot of others.
Okay. Cool.
I really wanted to put the words abridged when it went into the anthology, but
Right.
because it was just a more condensed version of it. But there's a full length.
Excellent. I know you want to encourage young people to start writing sooner. And Jacksonville and Putnam County, there's not a whole lot of programs out there. What would be your hope in the future for all the writing groups to encourage this?
I really want to start up something with the schools to get the kids interested in reading by having not so much a contest, but pretty much some kind of venture where the children would get to read and get acknowledged for reading so many books or whatever,
Oh,
and
okay.
and for being tested on their comprehension of what they read. But I don't know, for some reason, some of the members didn't think that was the way to go. And we would control the subject matter. It wouldn't be anything risque or stuff like that. But other than that, I guess we have to go into the school systems and try to work with the librarians. I haven't been inside of a school in decades. My children are long gone from that scene.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much power or influence a librarian has these days with everything being digitalized. And do they even still use a Dewey Decimal System or whatever? I don't know. Kids may not even know what that is.
Yeah. And you also have to deal with a lot of online educational programs are happening now.
Yeah.
Homeschooling is really big, and Florida does not have the best reputation when it comes to allowing children to read
Yeah.
things. And
I just read an article about a young girl who graduated with honors, and she said she can't read. How is that possible? Now, we knew in the past that happened to athletes. They can be on a team and they just automatically get passing grades because they're on a team and they can graduate with a degree, but don't know how to read or write. And I think a lot of that's been resolved. But to have a young lady that graduate honors from high school and she can't read, there's something wrong with that picture. But my hope is to get together with other writers in the area and as a group, because I think there's greater influence when you have greater numbers, and go to like libraries and organizations, civic organizations, and try to get them to partner with us and reaching out to kids and stressing the importance of reading.
the Duval County Library has Teen Lit. I'm not too sure what the program is all about, but I know that they do it a couple times a month generally, and they would be a good advocate in each of the county libraries in your area because you're in Putnam and there's Nassau and Bradford.
And I work closely with the head librarian here in Putnam. I know her personally.
Okay.
It's just getting the people to get involved.
They have a Writers Inc. group in Suwannee County and Lafayette County. The Suwannee County lady is Lana McCara, and she'll be presenting at the Indulgence Festival, by the way. She got involved with a Read Local program here in Suwannee County, and they go to different businesses and they have local authors come in and read, and they invite the kids to come in and talk about writing and learn about the books that are being written in their own county and that sort of stuff. And I think they do it like twice a month or something. They started small, and all the businesses, restaurants, bakeries, whatever, they set them up in a table and it bring people in. It's a cooperative kind of thing. Maybe something you can incorporate in your deal too.
Yeah, once I settle down with all these projects I'm involved with, I'll be able to put forth a better effort. Even right now, I have people that are sending people to me to review their manuscripts. And I'm talking about professional people that's writing like about history or something like that. And I get bombarded with that a lot. And I hate to say no, So I just have to let them know it's a waiting list here. So don't expect.
You also have to let them know there's a payment involved as well.
Yeah.
And there should
Oh,
be,
yeah.
because they're taking your time. And
Yeah, that's true. But I've been doing it pro bono for a while here because I'm set financially. But at some point, I'm just have to say I got too much on my plate.
it's a good thing to have to encourage people to seek other avenues. Yeah, as a group, supporting each other, that's always good. Getting a writer
Yeah.
group, and you have that's called a pod, I guess, 3 or 4 writers, and they're all about the same, so they help each other that way. That's fine. But there are editors out there that'll help them get their writing going a little faster. And attending writing groups and
Yeah.
meetings is always good. I like the fact that First Coast Romance Writers was the first ones that I found that had the Zoom meetings. Granted, it was because of COVID, but at least you're continuing them and you
Oh,
invite
yeah.
people in and you don't charge very much for
And I think what most people want me to do is just review a couple of chapters or whatever and let them know if they're on the right track. It's not like I'm doing editing or anything.
Oh, good. It's like a beta reader or an alpha reader
Yeah, there you
kind of
go.
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
And I could tell them, don't quit your day job.
I do that a lot too.
They all been great writers, though. I never had to tell anybody not to quit their day job.
All right. The last one, real quick. What are the top 3 tips that you would give to an up and coming writer?
Learn your craft as best as you can. Remain dedicated to the cause of being successful and one day being recognized for your talents. And sometimes you have to be patient. If it doesn't seem to be going fast enough for you, then you need to just be a little more patient. I've been writing since my college days, and last time I graduated, like I said, was in 2012, and I've written close to 20-some books. And here now, somebody recognized my writings, and it's going to be turned into a movie. Even though I didn't go out and say, hey, would you read this? It just happened. So I do believe in divine providence too at times, or others would call it luck. Put that in the equation too, luck and divine providence.
Okay. So this podcast will probably be published closer to the Indulgence Festival. Is there any other book signings? I know you're participating.
Yeah, I have a book signing coming up in September, actually two. September 3rd, I'll be in Orlando at a Rotary Club morning event, and I'll be the guest speaker. And then the following day, I head over to Winter Haven to speak before a civic group. I just spoke to a Rotary Club up here not too long ago. And in January, I was up in Jacksonville. I'm trying to cut down on all my travels and stuff because I want to do more work with my writings and get some things done around the house.
Thank you, Mr. CS Bennett, for being a part of the Jolene's Books and Writers Talk podcast. Another great episode has been put in the can and available for viewing on our YouTube channel and on various audio channels like Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. So look for those. If you would like to be a guest on our show, we would love to hear from you. Check out the link down below, southerndragonpublishing.com, and there's a page set up for you to join the family. And thank you so much for viewing. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment wherever you find us.